Hello and welcome. I'm Asuma Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says he will meet Danish officials next week to discuss rising tensions over Greenland. This comes as Washington continues to show interest in acquiring the strategic Arctic territory. Venezuela's Interior Minister Diosdado Cabello has said that a U.S. military attack that captured President Nicolas Maduro killed 100 people and wounded dozens. He has called the attack on Venezuela terrible. U.S. President Donald Trump signs a memorandum ordering the United States to withdraw from 66 international organizations, saying they no longer serve American interests. The White House says the move targets dozens of UN and non-UN bodies. A U.S. immigration officer fatally has shot a woman in Minneapolis, with Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem saying the officer defensively shot to protect himself. The woman has been identified as 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good. Jordan and the European Union will hold their first ever bilateral summit in Amman, bringing together Jordanian King Abdullah with European Council President Antonio Costa and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. The landmark meeting builds on the January 2025 strategic and comprehensive partnership, which includes a €3 billion EU assistance package. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has announced that Australia will launch a royal commission into the December 14th Bondi Beach mass shooting that killed 15 people, amid intensified calls for tougher controls and stronger action against anti-Semitism. BRICS, now comprising of 10 countries, is holding its first ever drill. It will begin tomorrow in South African waters under the theme Joint Actions to Ensure the Safety of Shipping and Maritime Economic Activities, with reports saying Russia and Iran will be participating, a move expected to raise concerns in the Western capitals. According to Syrian media reports, Syrian Finance Minister Mohammad Yasser Barnieh held talks with a Saudi Fund for Development delegation. The visit follows a January 6th meeting with Syrian Education Minister as Riyadh expands concessional financing for infrastructure and basic services in Syria. Now for this hour, we start with America's U.S. President Donald Trump has invited Colombian President Gustavo Petro to the White House. The invitation comes just days after Trump threatened possible military action against Colombia over alleged drug trafficking. Trump and Petro spoke by phone this week, marking the first direct conversation since Trump became president. Petro says the call helped re-establish communication with both leaders, addressing the recent tensions and discussing drug seizures, which Petro says have drastically increased in Colombia. The Colombian president has also emphasized his plans for a clean energy alliance and heightened efforts to stabilize neighboring Venezuela. He has called for a tripartite dialogue between Colombia, Venezuela, and the U.S. to prevent regional conflict. Trump has confirmed that the conversation in a post on Truth Social, praising Petro's tone and expressing his intention to meet him soon. Officials in Washington and Bogota are now working on arranging the high-level visit. Let's listen into what the Colombian President Gustavo Petro has shared.
Debe abrirse proceso penal contra esos funcionarios que son de los Estados Unidos. Así se incluya el funcionario mayor que dio la orden, el presidente Trump, que permitió los disparos de los misiles contra los jóvenes que simplemente querían escapar de la pobreza.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from Bulgaria. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now looking at this, as if I recall correctly, I remember that this Colombian president was denied visa, or his visa was canceled to US. Do you think that since Venezuela's leader has been taken to US by US, Do you think things have changed and he feels cornered to somehow reach to a consensus with U.S.?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Asuma. It's kind of a zigzag up and down, which is not unusual for Trump administration to play both cards, the carrots and the sticks. By the way, remember, a day before the capture of Maduro, Maduro also offered a negotiation with Trump. He wanted to meet Trump and to talk. The difference this time is that, in fact, Colombia does cooperate with United States a lot in terms of intelligence against the drug trafficking. So it's a very different story. Although both leaders, Maduro and Petro, are kind of a left-wing, kind of socialist and anti-American historically, the approach to drug trafficking is very different. Petro, the president of Colombia, does cooperate. He is very robust in terms of stopping drugs trafficking going into the US. But also, many people speculated that after Maduro will be Colombia next. Not really. Well, first of all, there are elections in Colombia this year. So Petro might, and the opinion polls show that he might lose the elections. He was not very popular among the Colombians, mostly because of his very kind of a left-wing socialist internal policy. So he might go anyway in 3 months. So there is no need really for another military operation here against Colombia. That's why, and also Colombia is a different story. It's a very protected, it's a larger country with bigger army. They will not allow such a quick intervention like Venezuela. So Colombia is a very different story. And Petro, for that matter, makes the phone call, and he wants to explain how Colombia cooperates with the combat against drugs. And for that matter, there is no surprise, I will say, that instead of escalating the hostilities here, we see exactly the opposite. And Trump also tried to play the peace card. He doesn't want to be seen as the aggressor of his second term. Of course, he used force against Iran, supporting Israel at one point and now capturing Maduro. But generally, his willingness continues to be a peacemaker. And for that matter, he will talk to everybody, including the Colombian president. So I'm not surprised of this development in terms of negotiations between Colombia and United States.
And also bringing this, what's U.S.'s intentions as it, like you rightfully mentioned, it uses, soft power and hard power both together, this administration. In particular, what is their what could be their final goal here?
Yes, the goal remains, and it's not different from controlling Latin America, the Monroe Doctrine, it's not gone. But there are different approaches here. You can do it with some of the presidents in Latin America through negotiations, through listening each other, and still trying to influencing policy. So basically a possible meeting between Colombian President Petro and Donald Trump will be about, it will be a powerful game for United States. They will make demands. They will basically make threats. Somehow the call by Petro was out of threats. So it's not simply offers of some concessions and carrots, it's also threats and sticks that bring Petro into the negotiation table here. And we wish to see that, how it develops. What is the concern mostly is that Donald Trump changes his mind all the time, but also his greed. He would like to take control, including of resources, including of oil and gas and other resources. So he's brutal in his demands against the national interest of those states in Latin America. So even with the willingness of the presidents of those countries in Latin America to cooperate, the uncertainty remains mostly because of Donald Trump, because he's a kind of a cruel, greedy president who wants to take and to show to his domestic audience that he, for example, brings oil. He's talking about oil tankers going from Venezuela to United States. He wants to make video and demonstrate, or something that never happened after the aggressions in Iraq and Libya. Never, ever a single tanker of oil came from Iraq to United States, or from Libya to United States. Now it's exactly the opposite. Donald Trump wants to show to the American audience, moreover, in an election year, 2026, that he will bring material benefit to the American people in the form of oil tankers from Venezuela. And that's a dangerous game. And for that one, he might fail. He might not be able to achieve that, because here there will be a strong reaction in all countries in Latin America and possibly in the world.
Thank you, Professor, for sharing that. Please stay with us as we come back to you for our next discussion as well. Now, the United States has seized a Russian-flagged oil tanker in the North Atlantic with support from Britain. The U.S. tracked the vessel named Bella 1 for over 2 weeks, suspecting it was linked to efforts to circumvent international sanctions on Venezuela. The tanker, now renamed Marinera, has been sanctioned by the U.S. for its connections to Iranian sanctions in evasion networks. A Russian submarine had been shadowing the ship, further escalating the tensions. British Defence Secretary John Healey has confirmed that the UK provided assistance in full compliance with international law. This operation is a key move in Washington's efforts to curb illegal oil exports. Let's listen into what the British Defence Minister John Healey has shared.
Today, the US conducted a military operation to intercept the motor vessel Bella 1 in the North Atlantic on its way to Russia. The UK, at the request of the US, supported this operation as part of global efforts to crack down on sanctions busting and shadow shipping activities.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Professor Veselin Popovsky. He's a professor and vice dean at Jindal Global Law School, joins us live from Bulgaria. Thank you very much, Professor, for staying with us. Now, what does this coordination reflect between UK and US?
Yes, very welcome news, because United States and United Kingdom are historical partners. Well, despite some language by Donald Trump, otherwise all the agencies, all the intelligence between two countries has been and will be very strong, and they cooperate. And here we have a good match of interest. On one hand, United States, Donald Trump want to control every oil movement in the Western Hemisphere. He announced himself that he wants all the control over the entire Western Hemisphere. And on another hand, the United Kingdom imposing sanctions on Russia is very interesting to cooperate with the seizure of oil tankers when they carry a Russian flag. So the interests match perfectly well here. It will continue that way. The good news also is that United States doing that already signals that it can take action against Russian Federation. Last year, we didn't see much from Donald Trump. We saw some ultimatums and some language, but not in terms of direct action to support the sanctions on Russia. And hopefully that will continue, because Donald Trump is realizing that just talking with Putin doesn't help at all. He needs to impose sanctions. And once he does that, when sanctions are actively imposed on Russia, that may make Putin more willing to sit on the negotiation table. All the last 12 months have been wasted by Donald Trump by believing that Putin will sit on the table. He never did. He basically denied all the offers of ceasefire in Ukraine and everything else. So here we have a cooperative, constructive move between United Kingdom and United States. And let's hope that will continue and that will bring together the alliance, not only bilateral, but also within NATO, to see a united front against the Russian Federation.
With that, I would like to thank Professor Veselin Popovsky for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move the focus on to Middle East. The Saudi-led coalition has said that the head of the southern separatist movement, Darus al-Zubaydi, has left Yemen secretly after he was being accused of high treason and removed from the Presidential Leadership Council. Airstrikes were carried out on his home province after he failed to attend talks in Riyadh aimed at easing the tensions. According to the coalition, al-Zubaydi left the southern port city of Aden by the sea and eventually flew to Abu Dhabi. The Southern Transitional Council, which he leads and which is backed by the UAE, has not confirmed the account. At the same time, the separatist group has accused Saudi Arabia of detaining a large delegation of its officials who had traveled to Riyadh for talks following recent clashes in southern Yemen. The council has said that at least 50 of its members were taken to an undisclosed location and held without explanation, raising concerns over their safety. However, a senior separatist official from the delegation has now affirmed full support and confidence in Saudi Arabia. He has also described discussions with the Saudi ambassador as fruitful, suggesting efforts are underway to resolve their differences. Meanwhile, tensions have also escalated in the ground in Aden, where separatist authorities imposed a nighttime curfew amid fears of renewed fighting with pro-Saudi forces. Images gathered from this area showed largely deserted streets as security forces increased patrols in the city. Now for this discussion, we welcome Lieutenant Colonel Himanshi Singh. He's a Defense and International Relations Analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel, for joining us once again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this escalating situation, what's being played? It's very interesting to see Saudi and UAE come to disagreement in Yemen.
It is not a mere political disagreement, it is the direct clash of interest. Why? Because Saudi has a red line, and the red line is the long-term security strategy, which depends on the bypassing of Strait of Hormuz to reduce its vulnerability to Iran. Now, for this, Riyadh needs direct access to Arabian Sea via Yemen, particularly through Hadramaut and Al-Mahara province, where future gas and oil pipelines are planned. Now, what has happened that the STC has, it has a strategic outreach. When forces loyal to al-Zubaydi, they attempted to expand their influence to Saudi dominant zones, Riyadh actually interpreted it as an existential threat to its national security architecture and not just a local power grab. Now, why UAE has a competing agenda? Because it is seeking dominance over Yemen's southern coastline and ports like Aden, Mukalla, and Sokorota. So, this will give them a control over Red Sea and Indian Ocean trades. So, Al-Zubaydi's escape, it underscores reality that now it is no more about Yemeni civil war, but it is Saudi and UAE proxies. They are confronting and playing out in Yemenian soil. Now, this curfew, as we are talking, this will actually make the situation very, very volatile. It will risk urban warfare because STC controls Aden, and UAE, they have their security belt forces, which are heavily armed and deeply entrenched in the civil area. So any attempt by Saudi-backed PLC forces will dislodge them, and this will have a high casualty combat. Apart from that, Saudi Arabia dominates the sky, but ground reality is much different, and it is a densely populated area. So any air attack will lead to mass killing of people. And this time with the fractions coming between the coalition of Riyadh and Abu Dhabi, people who are gaining are the Houthis, who are sitting and I think enjoying this, in Sana. So they must be undoubtedly watching this fratricide with, and enjoying it.
And what does the reported removal of departure of this leader Aidaros al-Zubaidi reveal about the shifting power dynamics?
See, we are very clear that this coalition was made just to show the world that these Middle East is together. However, when 50 of their people are taken into custody at Riyadh detention center, not just custody, they're hostages. So now Al-Jubaidi in Abu Dhabi, he's now sitting. So he must have been told by his Emirati handles that he is the president in exile of state, which does not really exist. Saudis have actually charged him with high treason, which actually closes the door for any diplomacy. The anti-Houthi coalition is now dead, it is buried. So I think when these forces, they cross the red line with each other, it becomes a troublesome ally and it becomes a national security issue for them.
Right. And lastly, how might this alleged detention of Southern Transitional Council officials, how do you think this is affecting or escalating situation further with the trust and coordination between Saudi Arabia and UAE-backed separatist forces?
See, since we know this coalition is dead, now what will happen? Yemen will move towards balkanization. Houthi will control the north. The STC will control the south, and Saudi buffer state will, control the Haramaut al-Mahara. So this fragmentation would result in institutionalized instability in the entire region. It will also affect the maritime, the world's most critical maritime routes. So I think the global security implications are much more than just the divide between these two countries. So any escalation which will happen in Red Sea shipping will impact the Europe-Asia trades. Insurance premiums will go out, and Iran could now be directly benefited by exploiting this instability in the region. Now, the Al-Zubaidi has refused to answer the summons from Riyadh because he fears the same fate as the 15 detained officials. So this is actually challenging the Saudi sovereignty over the anti-Houthi bloc. And since UAE is backing him, so the differences are very, very clear.
Thank you for highlighting that, Lieutenant Colonel. Now we move on to our next news. To Bangladesh, political violence in Bangladesh has intensified ahead of national elections with the killing of a senior opposition activist in the capital of Dhaka. Azizur Rahman Musabbir, a leader of the Swechhas Ebek Dal, the volunteer wing of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, was shot dead by unidentified assailants on Tuesday night. Police say Musabbir was attacked around 8:30 p.m. local time in the Karwan Bazaar area, one of Dhaka's busiest commercial zones. Gunmen opened fire at close range before fleeing the scene. Musabbir was rushed to the hospital but later succumbed to a gunshot wound to the abdomen. Another person was also injured and is reported to be in stable condition. The killing comes amid a string of recent shootings targeting political figures as campaigning continues under the Mode Code of Conduct. Security forces have launched a search operation, but no arrests have been made so far. Now we welcome back retired Lieutenant Colonel Himanshu Singh. Thank you very much, Lieutenant Colonel, for staying with us. Now, looking at this, what does this latest incident reveal? Do you think that Bangladesh will be able to hold the elections, this pattern of targeted political violence and also a lot of violence we saw recently towards minorities?
See, we need to stop treating this assassination as a simple law and order situation. What they are doing is not just random violence. It was surgical strike on him, and he was not a policy maker. He was a mobilizer. So a guy who can get 5,000 people on streets, in an hour. So it means he had some power there. So when you take out a middle level operational commander like him, just 4 weeks before the election, you are actually trying to break the opposition machinery. So the timing is very critical, as we were looking at, February 12th as the election date, the polls. So BNP is already on edge. So it is they are saying that internal administration is either compromised or incompetent, or Yunus government, which is caretaker government of Bangladesh, is unable to do anything about it. However, we know that this is a trap. This is a trap for BNP to actually escalate into this situation into massive violence. So which they are actually threatening that tomorrow they will have a blockade. So this will give military a pretext that they might be looking for a step to delay either elections, even to the Yunus government to delay elections and declare a temporary emergency situation. So Dhaka is actually burning, which the caretaker government must address these issues. Earlier, minorities were being targeted, but now opposition leaders are being targeted. So it is not about the angry crowd going and killing someone, but the entire thing somewhere looks that the full-blown regime is fractured.
Yes.
And election schedule is just now hanging by thread.
Thank you for highlighting that, very enlightening. With that, I would like to thank Lieutenant Colonel Himanshi Singh for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Now we move on to our tech news. ARM Holdings, a big chip technology company, has changed the way its business is organized and created a new physical AI unit to grow in the robotics market. According to the reports, this is the first time ARM has reorganized like this. ARM focuses on three main business areas: cloud and AI, edge, which covers mobile phones and PCs, and physical AI, which includes its automotive business. Physical AI mainly focuses on robots and cars. Even automakers like Tesla are working on robots to do warehouse and factory jobs. By focusing more on physical AI, ARM hopes to grow its business. The company believes robotics has huge long-term growth potential. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.